Financial independence is a must and you have to achieve it by yourself and not lean and depend on someone. So that was always ingrained in us. And a year later, I got an opportunity to work for Amazon, and then I took up that opportunity. And once I joined, it felt like, I was stepping away from academics. I didn't plan to go back into, doing research or pursuing science. You're not able to make things meet, you can always come back home. Of course, I never took them upon that statement, but just having them say it meant like, it's not like my final option to just come in Canada and struggle. It really, really helped.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's such a big statement.
I felt that I had to be more, financially capable to start the process. Now when I look back, I wish I had started earlier because of the time that it takes to adopt.
எனக்கு கேட்கும்போது அப்பாடா அப்படின்னு இருக்கு. Just waiting since 2023.
Yes.
How has that changed you or impacted you as a person? That just that wait time. Today's guest is someone who made a very bold and intentional decision of packing up her bags, leaving career back home in a very big company, moved to Canada for something that most of us would have only dreamt of, which is true independence. She grew up in a very close-knit family, somebody who made it a point to raise their daughters to be independent, strong, capable, and unafraid. She is an operations manager, a reader, a dancer, and I'm very proud to say our number one supporter of Mayanilla Art House, which you will know by end of this episode. Keeping all of that aside, today she's here to talk about a very important chapter that she's going to be entering her life, something that is still considered a taboo and an unconventional way of a woman to live her life. We are going to discuss more about that in detail. And she's been waiting for this chapter of her life for a very long time with a lot of patience and faith. And I'm really glad she's here to talk about it with us. Welcome to Nila and Beyond, Sharanya. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you so much.
And I have not told you this in person before, but you are the one person who showed up here more than anybody else. And I should say even more than myself. I have to be here, like that's a different thing. But you've come right from the beginning. I am really thankful for all the support you've shown to me and to the studio so far.
Absolutely. You have such a lovely space. Like from the first time I came here, I felt that warmth. So anytime, I'm able to, definitely I'm going to be here
so
supporting.
Thank you so much. We are going to talk about your journey right from the beginning. I'll just tell you one thing, that the reason why I wanted to start this is we as immigrants have a lot of problem when we move countries, right? So we want to touch base on how your transition worked here. And we are also going to talk about a lot of other important stuff as well. So let's start. Let's go back and start. Take us to your childhood, how your childhood looked like. And then we'll slowly move how you came to Canada, what was the reason, and how your first few years in Canada.
Thank you. I grew up in Chennai. I was born and raised in Chennai. And I lived in Chennai all my life until I moved to Canada. So like I said, like I introduced myself, like yes, I do come from a very close-knit family. I have one older sibling, one older sister. I had like a very sheltered childhood all while growing up because I was the youngest in the family. Of course, grew up with a lot of, lot of love, lot of freedom as well. And the great part is my mother also worked. For her main aim was, of course, we had to study well. She always was very intent on raising independent women who could be financially independent. Both my parents had other goals for us as well. Like, yes, they wanted us to study well, of course, to get married, like a lot of different goals, but they never took away the fact that financial independence is a must and you have to achieve it by yourself and not lean and depend on someone. So that was always ingrained in us. My sister studied like zoology when she graduated, and I wanted to follow in her footsteps because she took biology. I wanted to take biology as well. And then I did not want to do my engineering. I ended up doing my bachelor's in botany. And then I wanted to pursue biotechnology. So I did my master's in biotechnology and I wanted to pursue research. And again, it's great that even though it was not my parents' kind of journey for me, they were very supportive of my choices. So that really helps you as an individual and, growing up. Once I graduated, of course, I was keen into getting into into research, but it's a harder journey. You have to, of course, study a lot more, spend more years in research, which at that point I was unable to because I wanted to start kind of earning and contributing to the family income. I joined as a content writer with KPO back in Chennai, where I worked for a year. And a year later, I got an opportunity to work for Amazon, and then I took up that opportunity. And once I joined, it felt like, I was stepping away from academics. I didn't plan to go back into, doing research or pursuing science. It seemed like I was starting a career. So to help with that, my parents encouraged me to get my master's business administration. So I ended up doing an MBA part-time while I was working for Amazon. And then I was there for almost 6 years. I wouldn't say a need. It was more of just trying to expand my future, just to be more independent. My sister had some colleagues who had applied for immigration to Canada, and they kind of spoke about how there is a path. They were speaking about Australia and Canada, where there was immigration programs. I ended up applying to Canada in 2015, and a year later, my permanent residency to Canada was approved. I was working for Amazon. My initial plan was to quit and then start in Canada as a new immigrant. But I did have about 3 months before which I needed to move to Canada in 2016. So I'm very grateful. My managers back then also encouraged me to pursue internal opportunities in Amazon itself. And then one of the roles I had applied to actually worked out, and that's how I ended up actually internally transferring within Amazon too. I came to Canada in 2016 and I started in Vancouver. I started working and living there. I was there for almost 4 years, before which I transferred here to Toronto for a new site launch, as well as the fact my sister at that point had immigrated from India to the US, and she lives relatively closer to Toronto. So I needed that proximity, so I moved. So it's a very short nutshell of my last 10 years in Canada.
No, actually, we are yet to talk about the last 10 years. You told us everything before the last 10 years. So
yeah.
we'll come to the last 10 years too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there is so much I want to ask in that small introduction itself. So I want to go back to, how you told me about how your parents raised you. And that is not something that is very common, is
Yes.
what I want to say. That they don't teach their daughters to be independent, but when it came to teaching you about it, and if you had friends in your circle, how did it make you different from your friends when maybe their family did not teach them about financial independence, right? So how was growing up with that education from home?
It's hard to look back. I mean, I have a very close net of friends from school, but then I think we all came from very similar backgrounds, because at school, especially my close friends, were all a family of 2 daughters. Some of them had more than one sibling, especially the year that I graduated in. Most of us had either younger sisters or older sisters. It was not for me drastically different. At least I would say the environment or the family or the relatives that I had were like-minded individuals, I would say. But my parents definitely took it a notch higher in kind of instilling that kind of a sense of independence and strength and support. I think primarily it comes from there, both for me and my sister.
That's so sweet. That is really very nice. I want to ask you about your experience in Canada, and I want to term it as pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Oh, perfect.
You came here in 2016, and I'm pretty sure the Canada before COVID and after COVID was completely different. Take us to your first initial days in Vancouver. Like you said, you landed here. Did you have your friends already? How did you start your life from scratch here in Canada? And then also take us the same way to Toronto when you moved to Toronto. Yeah.
So again, it's funny because when you say pre-COVID and post-COVID, I can split my Vancouver and Toronto journey exactly like that, because I moved to Toronto in 2020, which was the mid of COVID.
Right, that makes sense.
So it reflects my Canadian journey as well. So when I moved to Vancouver, initially I did not know anybody. I do have family and cousins in Toronto, but not necessarily in Vancouver. I did live with a roommate in a shared accommodation for a month and a half. But I was very keen on finding my own space, and then I moved into my own apartment. What helped for me, primarily what helped was that particular year, my sister was traveling to the US for work, and and then she made it a point to take some time off, come visit me in Canada. She was especially there the day I moved into my apartment. I owe it to her because as much as I'm independent, but when it comes to setting up a home and running a home, those are things that my mother and my sister and my father as well included do it. That was not something that I had a first-hand experience with. So definitely having her come and help me set up my entire home and get kind of things started off really helped. And in 2016 especially, she visited twice within like I think a gap of 2 months, and that really helped. I think that was ground zero for me to start with.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
That's like you really need that support, especially in a country where you don't have anybody. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. How sweet. Yeah.
That was really, really nice. What for me helped in most ways, at least initially, was just work, because I was continuing with Amazon. Everything outside of work was foreign. It was like completely alien. It was really, I wouldn't say really hard, because you had resources, you had to kind of find out. But within Amazon, when I went to work, it was a familiar environment. Although it was a different process line, it was a different job function, but just, I don't know how to say, that familiarity of the organization you worked with for 6 years, that really helped me. Because at least in that space, when I worked like 40 hours, I was very familiar. It felt home. Before like Canada became home, Amazon was already home in some ways. So that helped me with the transition.
That's nice. That's lovely. I want to know personally, was there a plan B if your internal switch of job did not happen in Amazon? Like you got your PR. That's the cycle, right? You got your PR. Now you were telling your company that you want to resign, but they said, why don't you try an internal opportunity? But before they came up with that, did you have a plan B of what you would do otherwise?
The original plan, even before I started pursuing internal opportunities, was always to move to Toronto, because like I said, because my cousin and her family live here. The initial plan was to stay with them for a couple of months and start with the job pursuit and figure out how I would go from there. Like I did have like confidence in my education and the experience I had, and I don't know whether I was being naive. I was confident that I would give myself 6 months, that I would eventually find a job to my liking, and as well as the fact, I'll never forget my mother telling me that worst case scenario, if you feel like you're not able to make things meet, you can always come back home. Of course, I never took them upon that statement, but just having them say it meant like it's not like my final option to just come in Canada and struggle, like which I've heard from definitely other people who have moved here, right? It's not easy and everybody goes through their struggles, but just having, I guess when you ask me what was your backup, my backup was always family back home.
Your backup was going back home.
But yes.
No, I can imagine.
Yes.
Okay, that is a very nice one. But when you said, you were going to figure out, I don't think that you were being naive or something, but I think as women, we are instilled with that thought that you do something and you figure it out.
Yes.
You just figure it out. You're like, it happens, I can imagine. But no, you were not being naive. You were just being optimistic. And I think you figured it out, right? You worked in Vancouver and then you got another opportunity to move, and then you, like for the second time, you started scratch in Toronto. Now you told me that you had your cousins and relatives, but how was that transition from Vancouver to Toronto?
I think that was harder for me because I don't know, maybe because I was a new immigrant, and Vancouver is, again, I don't know what the exact comparison is. It is a much smaller, city compared to Toronto. It felt like more like a close-knit space, and especially where I stayed in a city called New Westminster, which was even more quieter and it just felt more comfortable, and it helped that I made a few friends there, like starting with my roommate, like a friend I met at work. I had more of a support system back in Vancouver compared to moving here. Yes, I was moving closer for family, but unfortunately those first, I would say even 2 years, because of COVID, there was a lot of restrictions in even visiting my own cousin. For a time period, I think it was a couple of months where we were only allowed to go to work, and because I worked for like Amazon, it was considered a essential industry. So I had a letter from work stating that I was okay to be out driving to work. It was that critical. Right. So I didn't have that many opportunities to go like out, meet friends, meet people, or even make those connections. So I felt like starting over in Toronto was harder, but it's become okay now that I've spent 6 years here.
I want to know something more about your upbringing as well. So when you said that there was always that support and education about financial, what did it look like on your day-to-day life? Like Tell us your day-to-day life of how these small things impacted you.
For me, especially when growing up, there was a time period when we didn't have a television at home.
Okay.
Now, when I look back, I think that was such a godsend that I didn't have it. No, it was good because I ended up spending more time with books. And of course, I always kind of naturally navigated towards hobbies my sister had, including reading. She introduced me to reading. When I started reading by myself, but of course, my parents were reading books to me, telling me stories right from the time I was a child. So it started from there. So I ended up spending more time, going to the library, reading. I think it was 8th grade where I got my own library card in school, and that was super exciting. Same year during summer vacation, my parents got me a library in the local library in Mylapore. So that was so exciting. So I feel like now when I see as an adult and when you see children growing up, they introduce technology, screens so much younger. I feel like maybe my world was more kind of enclosed and helped.
Oh, definitely it helped. Like I am going to talk about your reading.
Yeah.
We'll come to that also very soon. But like you said, this generation, I think they are introduced to technology. There's so much for them outside. Like there's so much of outside things that is impacting them that they don't know what to do without it. Like whether it is about feeding them, eating, when they want to see TV. They don't know. They're not going outside. They're not playing and all of that. But then, like you said, of course, not having a TV probably
definitely helped. And they definitely, I mean, again, kudos to my parents. They intentionally spend time with us. My dad, especially, because when I was a 3-month baby, she went back to work. She had to go back to work. And of course, there was daycare, there was other options, nannies, but it didn't work out. And I think when I was maybe a year or a year and a half, my dad took the decision. He switched to working night shift, and he took care of me during the day. Them, working consciously as a unit to make sure they were the primary caregivers and being so involved. And growing up, like, of course, my mother was working, but the minute she used to come home was always ensuring that, what both of us were doing. What did we do in, school, involving us and being very involved in our studying as well. Like, I think until 8th grade, she used to handwrite, notes and everything that I was learning. So that, and my dad now, especially in Canada, when I have to do these odd jobs, of course, for some of the complicated stuff, I do get help. But the smaller jobs, when I, take care of things around the house, that came from my dad. Like when he used to go and work around the house, he used to take my sister, show us what he was doing. So that differentiation that, certain things have to be taught to girls or boys was never there at my home. I always wonder, would it have been different if we had a brother growing up? But that's something we never know, right? It was just 2 of us and they taught us what we needed to know.
Yeah, so true, true. I can completely relate to that. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that your driving force to move to Canada was to expand and also sort of try independence in a different country, if I can say so.
Definitely.
Right? That thought of moving came into your mind. You would have had an imagination of how that independence is going to look, right? Was your imagination and your reality once you came to Canada, was it the same or was it like drastically different?
I would say similar, because I knew that starting by myself from scratch wouldn't be easy, and that was reality. One thing I kept expecting was that I would kind of get over missing my family, that it would come to a point I'll be okay with being away from them. But that's what I struggled with initially in Vancouver. I kept waiting for this feeling to pass and it never passed. But then the breakthrough was realizing that that feeling will never change. I think just accepting it really, really helped.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's such a big statement. That was a breakthrough for you. Just
accepting that feeling of just missing family, friends, that familiarity of growing up in India, in Chennai, never leave. Right? That's something, that's a part of life that I've accepted it now, which was very initial harder, because I thought there would be, I would wake up one day and I'll be like, I'm great. I love being in Canada. I mean, I love being in Canada, but it's along with the feeling that you're constantly missing something.
After the breakthrough, after the acceptance, are you feeling different?
Missing is constant, but I've made space for that feeling of, missing something. That it's there, it exists right along with me, and I'm okay. And in some days it's harder. You take, I call and I talk to family for a long time. Some days it's okay, so I handle it differently.
Yeah, you've learned to coexist with it.
Yeah.
Right, that's lovely. That's very nice. Now we will move into the very important conversation that I have been dying to talk to you since you wrote that in the form. I am like, how did you not tell me about it? I am truly, this is always that running in my mind. Like, how could you have not told me in any of those conversations? And I'm so happy you want to share that. Okay, I'm telling this really very much. So, first of all, becoming a parent in itself is a very, very big challenge to anybody. And you've decided to do it alone. I want to know why, how, when, everything. I want to know everything about it, first of all. Having said that, other layer of that challenge is becoming an adoptive parent. Like, there is so much different thoughts and ideas, and I don't think many of us here as an immigrant know any of anything related to that process. So now I want to take this, and I'm so happy you brought it up, that I want to talk about this. Like, there could be so many of us in Canada, especially Indians, as especially women, especially single women who want to become a single parent. I want this podcast to be the best reference they can have. So I'm going to dig and drill and do everything I can to get you information out of you. I hope that is fine. But
That's okay.
Of course, feel comfortable if you're not, you don't want to answer anything. I want to first know, can you share the moment when you knew and you had made up your mind? Like, was it an instant saying, okay, you know what, this is the path I want to take? Or was it a process you went through and at the end of it you made the decision? Tell me. I want to know the moment.
Definitely,
also.
I love to share. It's hard for me to recall because I went through the same when I had, during one of the process of adoption, you'd go through you meet a psychologist and you have an interview. Going before how I felt at 17 is just harder for me to remember because I hardly remember. But at 17 is when I decided that I really wanted to adopt. That moment is very clear because I used to write journals as a teenager, I would say, and I've like written in my journal. So that's my definitive, age when I decided that I wanted to adopt from 17. So what led to that thought is kind of hazy for me now because for me now that's always been my dream and that's what I'm working towards. That's my current reality. Prior to that, it's honestly very easy. It's been a lot of years.
Yeah, I am going to take a moment because I thought you'll say 2-3 years ago, but you're talking about at the age of 17.
Yes.
You were clear what you wanted, that you wanted to be an adoptive parent. Like, okay, give me 2 seconds, please. No, seriously?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. I think I should start writing journals. I might remember a lot more things. To be very honest. Okay. It was just one single moment of clarity that you wanted to be.
I don't know if it was one moment of clarity or what my thought processes that led to it, but from 17 or at 17 is when I knew that I wanted to adopt.
Okay.
That was definite. And I remember, of course, I couldn't think too much about it when I'm studying or when, right? And even when I started my career, like in my first I was just starting. I was making like 7,000 rupees a month, right? It was starting off. Then once I got into Amazon, I did my MBA. I was 3 or 4 years into my career is when I actually started looking up the process of adoption. And I remember at that time, and I could be mistaken, the age for a single parent to adopt, I believe was 30. Now it has been relaxed, but I'm talking about, I would say 2013, 2014, around that time, very specification. So then again, I put it aside, but then the getting on this journey of adoption and being financially, emotionally, ready to be a parent was also one of the reasons for immigrating to Canada. That was also my aim because now that I think of it, given the stage of life I am at now, I feel like I could have attempted adopting in India as well, which would have been much more, I would say, quicker. I wouldn't say necessarily easier, but definitely quicker. And I'll get into what the difference is. But at that period in life, I felt that I needed to step away from home instead of being in my parents' home as the youngest child, where everything is kind of, handed over to you. And if I wanted to step on this journey of parenthood, I could not step into it in that state of mind. So it was also proving to myself and establishing myself as like being independent, financially being able to, showcase your ability to adopt and raise a child. So that also was a motivating factor in moving to Canada, definitely.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. You answered one of my questions there. So intention behind adoption was constant, whether you were in India or whether you were in Canada. It was going to be there.
Yes.
Your move to Canada, you answered that.
Yes.
It actually, one of the reasons you moved is because you wanted to become more stable. Yeah, that's amazing. Did you already start your process in India, or did you already mentioned that it is the minimum is 30. So you sort of looked into the process.
Yes.
But then you've started the process in Canada, right?
I started the process in Canada. Yeah, I looked it up in India, but then again, because of the age, and then I was in the process of moving. The whole immigration process took a year and a half. And again, the processes for adoption varies depending on the country that you're, living in. So it would be distinctly different. So then my aim was to come to Canada, establish myself, and then restart the process, which I did look it up when I was in Vancouver. But I feel like when I was in Vancouver, I was in a rented space. I was still kind of establishing myself. I felt that I had to be more, financially capable to start the process. Now, when I look back, I wish I had started earlier because of the time that it takes to adopt. No regrets. I can't go back in time.
Of course.
Yeah.
No. Now we'll come back to the process.
Yes.
I can imagine how lengthy of a process that's going to be, but tell us the most important bits that if somebody today who's watching wants to think about adopting, what is their starting point? What are the steps that they'll have to go through? Very briefly.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're okay sharing
of course.
your personal experience, absolutely. But if just to give us a brief of what that process looks like and what it is that you're waiting for, right?
So if you are looking to adopt from Canada, adopting a child from India in Canada, of course, that's considered as an international adoption. It's governed by the laws both in India and Canada. In Canada, we have established agencies that you have to work with if you are pursuing adoption. And I think that's primary because there are a lot of sources and references that can be misleading. It's very important that you find the specific agency that is authorized to kind of represent you and help you adopt from India. And then once you have those agencies, I think we have 2 that I'm aware of in whole of Ontario, and the agencies policies also differ across the provinces. So if you're in Ontario, you seek an agency that's authorized, and then they kind of act as your starting point. Like I said, there's a wealth of information out there, but the agency helps kind of narrow it down to what is specific for you. And then I started, I think, back in 2021, where I sat down for like an introductory call with them, who kind of walked me through the process. So although I say that it is a long timeline, but this is something I was aware of right from the time I had that initial call with them. And then once you decide on going ahead, the initial, I would say, about a 2-year period, and if you accelerate it, yes, it can be done, I guess, within a year or year and a half, is getting all of your paperwork for approval of the process. And that paperwork could range from getting police clearance, even your educational work documentation, like kind of attested, health checkup with your doctor. There's a psychiatrist evaluation that you see, psychologist evaluation that you go through. There's a psychologist test that you take. So all of this adds to your paperwork, and you work along with adoption practitioner who kind of helps you put together all of these documents. And of course, the agency is also backing you, but primarily it's done with your adoption practitioner, and you also have home study visits with them, kind of looking at your motivation to adopt, your means, your resources. All of that is evaluated because you are bringing a child into your so once that entire application package is put together, the first approval is and the agency takes over this step where they submit it to the government of Ontario for an approval. So that takes a considerable period of time, and once you get the approval from Ontario is when the same documents, again, if they're expired, you redo them, and then entire application package is submitted to India. And then there is a waiting period for India to approve. So it's a 2-step approval. And once you get your approval from India, you're officially in a waiting list of parents to adopt. And I'm really grateful because when I started the process in 2021, the preference, or I wouldn't say preference, it was just the system was designed in such a way that parents of Indian origin living in India, which would be domestic adoption, would be given first priority, followed by any parents, families, outside of the country. But I think, I don't know the year, so I don't want to incorrectly quote, but later it was changed that even OCI holders would get the same priority as domestic parents, which is amazing.
And that changed after you got into
After
the
I started in 2021, it changed. So I am on a waiting list, I would say officially as of 2023. September 2023 is when I submitted my entire application package to India. And from that time period, you're on the waiting list. So the reason why it takes longer, of course, is depending on the age group of the child you're adopting, gender of the child, it does take time. Because if you look at the numbers, the last I read is there are, I would say, about 37,000 families, both domestic and international, waiting to adopt, whereas the number of children available to adopt are much less. It's, I think, 4,000 or less than 4,000. So that's why it takes time.
Wow. And you're put on that number based on when you applied, or is there certain sort of eligibility that gets you ahead of the line?
No, it just depends on the time of application.
Time
Time of application.
Okay. Only when you're eligible, you're going to be put on
You're
the
going to be
list.
put on the list.
If
Yeah,
not,
you
you're
can be
not.
put on the list only when, as an international applicant, you're approved both by Canada and Ontario, because we are in Ontario, and then by India, and that's when you're on the list.
Right. That is a really, really lengthy process. எனக்கு கேட்கும் போதே அப்பாடா அப்படின்னு இருக்கு. So that uncertainty, right? You've been waiting since 2000. Forget about the application process because you're busy doing something.
Yes.
Something or the other is in the process, right? But just waiting since 2023.
Yes.
How has that changed you or impacted you as a person? That wait time.
Like you said, like going back to the application process, that time period is something that I didn't share it with anybody outside of my immediate family. I felt like it was kind of similar to what biological parents go through, right? You might plan for a child, you don't know when it's going to happen. And even I've seen it with my friends, acquaintances, nobody announces the pregnancy immediately, right? Because it's a lot involved. So at that initial stage, I didn't feel like sharing, as well as the fact that there was a lot of documentation and a lot of steps. Like I had to be very structured, very methodical. There was a lot of, conversations, appointments, scheduling. That kept me really occupied, right? And I had very little time to think how the wait would be, what the outcome would be. Yes, I was also worried about the outcome, about the approval process. Although there was nothing, standing out in my application, but until it officially, arrived saying that you are approved, that little bit of anxiety was something that I carried. But yes, until everything was submitted, since I was occupied, I didn't give it much thought. And like you rightly asked, after that has been difficult dealing with the wait. But like I said, until I got the approval, I was focused on, will I be approved? Will I get through this hurdle? That was the thought process. Once that came through, I know I'm like a religious person. I'm a very spiritual person. Saying it and feeling it is different, right? And I feel like my faith has been tested, but that's also something that's helped me like hold on with faith, because now that everything is in place, I feel like, yes, I've trusted the journey, but I have to trust the end of the journey as well, right? And what is meant will happen, however long it takes, right?
Wow.
So it's easy to say it as a statement. It's been difficult, but then one great thing is through the adoption agency, we've had like a session where we got together with other parents, and it was more of a training session and a knowledge sharing session through which I got to meet other parents who are also in similar journeys. Some parents who have adopted, some parents who have just applied, who are in various stages of adoption. So you have that network. So that really helps, because it really helps to talk to anybody who's in such a similar state of mind journey who has that relatability. But outside of that, now that everything was approved and I was only waiting, and then I was comfortable sharing with more of my extended family, with a lot of my friends, and that sort of support that I have means the world, and that kind of carries me through, because most of the questions that would come wouldn't be on like how are you handling the wait. It's like, when is the baby coming? We can't wait, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and that sort of anticipation, and the fact that they are talking about it, that it's going to happen tomorrow, or it's without a doubt it is going to happen, right? Because when I am really alone with my thoughts, there will be some moments like, is this even going to happen? And like I said, and I have to rely on my faith that it will happen. But just having that support with family and friends, it's been immense. And that's what is carrying me through.
I am sure it's going to be there. It's only going to amplify once people watch this. There's going to be a lot of love and support virtually that's going to come towards you. But you sort of took me to the next part that I wanted to ask you. So two things I want to ask you is one, what was your family's reaction when you told them? So did you tell them when you were 17, or did they know like long term you are going to do this, or was it like a sudden information that you're going to do this?
My sister already knew.
Okay.
But for my parents, I remember once when they visited me in Vancouver, I'm not scared of them, but of course there's a lot of in just sharing that with them. So I took my own sweet time, and with both my my mother and father, it was a day before they flew back to India. I took them out for dinner and I told them this is what I wanted to do, and they didn't brush it aside. But at that stage when I was in Vancouver, they were kind of concerned that I was planning to do this by myself. They were like, you know, we are not against adoption or you having a child. That's amazing. Why don't you get married and adopt? That was more of their question. But it was a short conversation because for me, I hadn't even officially started. This was just me initially sharing the news with them. And then later when I started the process in 2021, and that was the time when my nephew was actually born. He was born in 2021, so I had my parents visiting. So they were there with me throughout the initial application process when I had my home study, all of it. And again, they've always been very supportive. Of course, as parents, at the back of their mind, they feel like, oh, it would be great if she would get married. I think absolutely normal for any parent to feel. And initially I struggled that I shouldn't say they were not supportive. It was more of they didn't put the focus more on my journey. I used to feel bad that they're not immediately jumping into my side and being like super supportive, being vocally. It took a few years, many more conversations, but they have never openly been against it.
Right. It just took them some time to process.
To process, yes. Yeah. That I was absolutely being sure. And they asked me, like, this is something you can do by yourself. You know, you're here by yourself. And, like, of course, I've seen my sister closely, you know, parent, my sister and my brother-in-law. And yes, when you're in a foreign country with less support than when you're raising children back in India, it is different. But then, like I said, like having friends, having families around you, having that community who have experience, who are experiencing the same, of raising children in, like, you know, smaller communities here, definitely reaffirming that yes, it's in no way is the journey going to be hard, but it's definitely doable.
Wow, that is so nicely said. And as parents, I think they have no choice. They will support you. They might initially not, but as a parent, I think they end up supporting whatever you want to do.
Yes, right? but Monica, honestly, I don't mean to cut you off. No. But amazing that you and I can say that with so much openness, because I have seen some of my, I wouldn't say close friends, but people that I've grown up with who didn't have this much of a choice. There was one instance, this is something that it's always been very vivid in my memory, when I was doing my master's in biotech, and that was something I had chosen to do. Actually, I would say all the 5 years where I studied, I enjoyed, right? I didn't make a career out of it, but just those days and hours of being in the lab is something I loved. There was one conversation where we were seated outside our department. I think it was closer towards when we were graduating. She was kind of upset, and she said that all I wanted to do was study engineering, and my parents did not allow me. That is why I ended up doing this. And I think I didn't realize that was such a moment of privilege that I had grown up with, the life that's been offered to me. I wouldn't say I took it for granted, but it came with ease. So I maybe I lived in a bubble that, you know, this is how it is for everyone. That moment kind of shattered my belief that the course that I was enjoying so much was something that another person didn't want to do. She had to do it because it was like forced on her. And of course, growing up from there on, I've seen instances when parents are not, or family is not as supportive. I consider myself really, really privileged and blessed to have the family that I have.
Yeah, totally. And that takes me to the next follow-up question based on our previous statement that you made, that you had, once everything was done, like once your approval was done,
yes,
you started telling people.
Yes.
And they reacted much in a joyful way. Then, oh, nee, pripandre.
No.
They had a very happy reaction, right? What I want to know is, did you have people judging you? How did you deal with the judgment? I don't know if you had it, but was there any judgment of why you would do it? You know, and how did you probably come out of that or deal with that?
No.
It was,
I think one or two of my like colleagues, not colleagues. Colleagues have been like super supportive. Like one of my close friend was like, "You sure you don't want to do it alone? Do you want to look at getting married and pursuing this simultaneously?" It was just a curious question. Like I think I've been very very lucky that way that everybody has just been overjoyed when I've told them.
how sweet. I think that just makes your journey a little bit easier. No? Because
Little
you're
and a
already
lot
dealing-
easier.
Yeah, you're already dealing so much emotionally, and I think just that non-judgment, just that love and that joy, I think it just makes it so much easier.
Easy. I am an introvert. I have a close circle of friends who are very close and family friends, of course, who have known all my life. So within that small circle, like each and every one of them, when I told them when I was comfortable, sharing it with them, have been just so supportive.
Wow, how sweet. That's so nice. Since age, I'm again going back to age 17, but it could be even before that, from the moment the thought came into your mind. From then till today, where you've been waiting for almost 2.5 years now, has there ever been a moment of doubt? Maybe idna paneer ko koodadu. Has there been anything
No,
like
never. Only thing like when I told earlier was like, why didn't I pursue this in Vancouver? That thought came to me.
Yeah.
But again, like I would never pause and regret. I think in many decisions in life, I've thought about it, but if I let that regret grow, I mean, there won't be any space for anything else. But then in the grand scheme of things, I thought that even if I had started back there, I would have started in a different province where the rules would have been different. Here, the rules are different. So I might have had to come and restart the process here. Again, I don't know how complicated that would have been. And I truly believe that, like I said, when it's meant to be, it has happened. Like when I needed to apply, I had to apply here. So
that was literally just what's coming across my mind, that probably you moving from Vancouver to Toronto was already planned or destined. That's why you did not start, because you would have done part of your process there and then your move would have happened, and then probably that's why it was meant for you to start in Toronto. Let's fix that. Okay. That is so nice. Now, is there something you want to tell? Like, let's say somebody comes to you and says they want to start the process of adoption. Here, India, Canada, wherever it is, just that process itself. What is it that you will tell them not to be afraid of? Let me specify. Single parent. I'm not talking about a couple who's trying to adopt. I'm talking about single women, somebody who's a single woman who wants to adopt or get into the process of adoption. What is it that you will tell them not to be afraid of?